Good afternoon, Facebook and Instagram audiences and YouTube. How are you? I'm here with Gary Parker. My name is Jennifer Noreen, and Gary is the barbecue pit master at Barbecue to You in Gig Harbor, Washington. So, how are you, Gary?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm great. So, Gary's
Bless.
restaurant is on Point Fosdick in Gig Harbor. He has one location. Many wish he had many locations, but he only has one.
I do.
And he's become quite famous locally for his brisket and other Southern style food. So Gary, today we're going to talk about. Do you remember?
Let's see. Rubs,
Yeah,
spices, and marinades.
sauces, rubs, and marinades. What should I use and when?
Yeah,
So these are very formal questions, and Gary's not a very formal guy. So I'm going to ask him, and he'll probably make fun of him, but that's okay. We're going to get
I
through the
will,
questions.
because
So
they're
what
really
are
high level.
what are the key components of a well-balanced barbecue sauce, and how can they be customized to suit different tastes? So some people like sweet, some people like salty, some people don't like sauce at all. So what are the key components of a sauce,
Well,
and
the
how do
most
you not
for
overpower
for a
people?
sauce, it's all about the base, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's two kinds of sauces, right? There's thin sauce and there's thick sauce. We use, mine is a thick sauce, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got real watery sauces too that also double, and both of them double as marinades. All right. So if you want to talk about sauce, okay, but it can also be a marinade, and a marinade can
Okay.
also become a sauce, right? Um, but it's the base, right? And so here at Barbecue to You, of course, we're ketchup based, right? And so we keep the consistency of the tomato paste and these kinds of things, right? That govern the overall texture of it. And
Okay.
then when it comes to flavor, all right, flavor works the same way with sauces as it does with rubs. And there are five primary components to that, right? One is sugar, the other one is savory, one is the standout ingredient, one is spicy, and one is salt. And we call those the five S's.
Wow. Okay. Well, tell us about those. So have you made? Well, tell us how you formulated the sauce that people can find at Barbecue to You.
Uh, well, it has all those things, but really the story behind the sauce that I make here in the store
Mm-hmm.
is a sauce I discovered from a gentleman I once met while I
Mm-hmm.
was tooling around the oil rigs and things up in North Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And me and a friend of mine, we were out hanging out with some of these guys, and it was one night, and we were cooking up some food next to the oil rig, and he whipped this thing together really quick, and it was so good um, and it was pretty simple because I was able to memorize the recipe that easily, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been making it ever since and modifying it ever since, right?
Mm-hmm.
And its base is ketchup, and then there's key spices in it, and a little bit of savory, and there you go. That's what you got. You got sweet and tangy today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I find the sauce at your shop to be a little bit tangy for sure.
Yeah.
Tangy, a little bit sweet. Yeah.
Hmm.
So give us the five S's again. That was very interesting.
Okay, you like that?
I
All
did.
right. So they are sugar,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sugar's is an obvious one. It puts some flavor into things. It helps in the rub side. It helps a little bit with bark. When you want to do these things. First of all, it's different. Because I only use salt, pepper, smoke. Okay, I don't like making bark out of sugar, but a lot of people do, right? And so a lot of their rubs will contain a lot of this fancy stuff, right? And it can make some really great barbecue, right? It's not traditional barbecue, but it's really great tasting barbecue. And we encourage people to do these things with rubs and sauces, and in the middle between rub and sauce is wet rubs, and we'll talk about that in a second too, right? Um, but they all have the five basic components. The sugar goes in to create flavor. It kind of helps you um, control your standout ingredient as well as your spice, right?
Okay, so you said there's five S's. So sugar.
Yeah, that's sugar. And then savory. So this is the one that gets everybody. What the heck is savory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Savory has a definition around it. It creates richness in the salt. A lot of times it will You can put in, for like a sauce, you can put in Worcestershire or soy sauce,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it gives you, and it brings up that richness, that level of meaty flavor, right? That'll sit
Mhm.
just underneath your sweetness and your spice, right?
Mhm.
And rubs, a lot of times it's going to be your cumin or your garlic powders or your mustard seed, these kinds of things. These things will add a gluten component into it, and will give you this. It'll sit on your tongue, and in this reason we call it savory, like we do. Savory is also a natural occurrence. To give you a little background on that, that's why this kind of stuff gets confusing, because this is chemistry, right? And at a certain level, but when meat gets hot, it produces a glutamate. Okay, and in its natural state, without putting anything on meat, you'll taste that rich meat flavor. Take a steak that you grilled, right?
Mhm.
And you didn't put anything on it; you just grilled it, but it's got that real beefy flavor to it. That's that glutamate reaction, right, to heat that puts that in there. So now bring that up and try to duplicate that out in sauces and in rubs and these kinds of things. You're trying to add a glutamate in there in order to get the savoriness. I hope that makes sense to people,
Yeah, I've never heard of glutamate.
because without sitting there actually doing it and putting it on your tongue, it's kind of hard to explain.
Yeah, interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
So sugar, savory, and what's the next S?
Next test is standout ingredient. All right, so this is the thing that what are you trying to do with this particular rub, right? Do I want to make it taste super sweet, right? If I do that, then I'm going to, this is kind of like Tennessee, Kentucky. They put a lot of, they use a lot of brown sugar in their rubs. Okay, um, because they really like to get that caramelization, and I guess that puts a lot of meat in there, or
Mhm.
a lot of sweet into it, right? And candies a lot of things, right? So the
Mhm.
extreme of it is when you candy a piece of meat, right?
Mhm.
Um, so so your standout ingredient can be a lot of things. It could be any herb, right?
Mhm.
A lot of it is rosemary. A lot of times we'll go in and bring in a certain flavor profile. I'm trying to think. So, garlic is another one,
Yeah.
but it could also be a savory. Um, Sharpness, right? I'm trying to think. I don't do a lot of them, so I don't have them readily on top of my head. I've got them written down in my little secret private book, right?
Mhm.
But from when we play, but you get the idea. So we want to. So when we have that standard ingredient, it's all about what do you want? What do you want this thing to taste like, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and so what? That's the thing that sits on your tongue, and you say, "Oh, I taste the XYZ, right? Ingredient in this." So that's your superstar.
Mhm.
I bet you. And the next one you understand, it's called spicy. All right. So, and there's a difference, right? You can use things, that are very blended, like cayenne, right? That'll mix it really well. You can get extremely aggressive with it, with your habaneros and your jalapenos in some cases, chili peppers, those kinds of things, right? So
Mhm.
you can put that spice level in there,
Mhm.
you know, and then but probably the most important one and the most misunderstood one, outside of savory, is salt, right?
Oh, yeah.
Salt is what really creates the chemical reaction with the proteins. All right, at a
Mhm.
super high level. The thing you have to understand, or you'll find out when you study this, when heat on meat and salt is applied, okay, the protein molecule starts to unravel. It
Mhm.
starts to untwist and unravel when
Mhm.
when salt is applied.
Mhm.
All right, and that's why salt can be used as a tenderizer.
Right. Sure.
Uh,
Breaks it down. Yeah.
it breaks it out, but that's different than breaking down collagen, and those kind of things, where that's where we let aging, or as I've told you in here before, we do that with a lot of heat, right? We'll break collagen down that way, but we're not
Mhm.
really messing with the proteins, right? Proteins are messed with the salt, right?
Mhm.
And that works. And I've told you before about how it opens up the pores, and
Mhm.
how that lets whatever your spice deck, when you're using using a rub, for example, that's what allows it to go down and penetrate into the meat. So, and that whole thing has a name, that process, and it's called denaturalization, right? And you can look that up and you can read all about it if you're interested. Or sometime we can have a show on just denaturalization effects.
So why did you choose to do a sugary sauce in your store? Why did you formulate your sauce and put your name on it? I mean, we have a picture of it here. I can share it.
Yeah,
But why did you do the one that you did?
because the
Um,
largest majority of Americans have sweet teeth. Sweet tooth. They like sweet. They like hot and they like sweet. And I can't do the hot anymore because I usually have this habit of making it too hot, and
mhm,
for people. And so to be safe, we don't do the hot one much anymore. We just do the sweet and tangy.
mhm. All right. Well, and then on to the rubs. So,
Yeah,
are there similar patterns to rubs? I mean, I know you do a sugar pepper rub, but tell me about the
same
rubs
thing.
that you use and what you sell in your store.
It's the exact same thing, only except you're using a liquid base, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you do rubs, when you do sauces, right, you're doing a liquid base, right? When you do rubs, you just don't have the liquid base, but you have the spice blends,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's all
Oh,
you're
okay,
doing.
got you. Mm-hmm.
It's still the five S's, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how you add it up, okay. And many times you take the rub and you put it in whatever your base is in order to make it, right? So um, Texas Texas stock. So there's three different real kinds, right? You have the ketchup base, like what I've showed you. There's the Worcestershire based,
Mm-hmm.
which is in some regions of Texas in the South, and then there's the mustard base, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like you have in the Carolinas. Okay, but really, a lot of times it's similar things to what you're using in your rub, and you're mixing it in with those bases, and you're making a sauce out of it, right? Or going in the reverse. You take the liquid base out, and you leave the spice stick, and you got a rub. Okay,
So, is the difference between your rubs and the sauce the ketchup or the tomato base that you add?
is it
Kind of.
between the what? Say it again.
Is the difference between your sauce and the rubs that you have in your store the tomato base that you add to make it a sauce?
I
Kind of.
could, but those are two different recipes in this particular case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the red rub that we use is it has a lot of sugar in it,
Mm-hmm.
just like we were talking about. It's got salt in it, salt and
Mm-hmm.
pepper, and
Mm-hmm.
it's got a lot of garlic and oh shoot, give me a second. I don't want to forget one. Yeah, we got a lot of garlic and onion on it in it
Mm-hmm.
to provide the savory side of
Mm-hmm.
it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot of cayenne pepper in it.
Okay.
So
But in general, the ingredients or the components of a well balanced sauce are these things you see on the screen here: sugar,
yeah,
savories, what's your standout ingredient, spicy, and salt. Okay.
yeah,
How can
it's
you
all
balance?
based around that. Huh?
Wait, what?
It's all based around that for me.
Yeah, I get you. How can you balance the flavors in a marinade or a sauce to not overpower the natural taste of the meat? I mean, you have fans that are so fanatical about not using any sauce, and then
Mhm.
you have fans that absolutely won't eat your brisket without
Yeah,
sauce. I'm in the
sure.
latter group. So, how do you make a sauce that doesn't ruin all that work you did to get to that wonderful brisket taste? How do you make sure you're not
As
overpowering?
a restaurant, I've basically taken that sauce and neutralized it. Right, it's
Mm-hmm.
not too sweet, it's not too tangy, it's not too hot.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of this middle of the road thing, right? If I'm a cook, a private cook, or I'm cooking on my back deck, right? I may choose today. I will wake up in the morning and say, I feel like I want more spicy. Oh, I
Yeah.
feel like I want it thinner today, or I
Right.
feel like I want it thicker today, right? And so then you're modifying for the cook at that point, right? So it's all about the tongue, and it's all about your mood, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
what you feel like doing today, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
but you're just moving the quotients um, of the salt, peppers, spices, the savories. You're
Yep.
moving them around in different proportions just to make those things pop out. And with a little practice, it's easy. Right?
Yep. Yeah, no, it makes sense. So we have a question from Melanie Hamby, and she wants to know, do you recommend using tarragon for a steak rub? And if so, what else would you add to make the steak pop? Do you even
Make
recommend
this.
tarragon or not so much?
Um, well, I'm a little bit out of my league with steak because I don't do a lot of steak. I do a lot of brisket, right?
Hmm.
So I have to think about it a little bit. What would I add? Because I'm a natural on steak. I'm just a natural beef guy, right?
Hmm.
I use really just some really basic salt and garlic and onion,
Hmm.
right? If I do anything on a steak,
Hmm.
um, and then I just get the fire really hot, for steak, and I'm probably cooking, 700 degrees, that kind of thing, and I'm on it, 3 minutes, each side, and let it rest for a minute, and I'm done. Right? I don't do a lot of stuff with steak, so I'm not probably the best person to ask that.
Yeah,
Right?
well, honestly, I remember when I first saw you cook brisket and I saw how you spiced it. I thought it was going to be this 5-step process and super complicated. The most you talked about was the level of coarseness of the salt, and it was
Yep.
basically salt and pepper. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's it. And it really
That's,
is the taste of the meat that Gary's after. There's not a big magic formula of spices in that brisket. I know because I've watched him make it many times. And that was very interesting to me. It's a very simple bucket of salt and pepper, and it's just rubbing it on it in the right amount. And what is the coarseness of the salt again? Is it like
uh,
16?
salt and the pepper. I do a number 16 grind on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not too. I mean, that makes a nice chunk. If you remember um, you remember how I was explaining to you when the fat melts, it grabs the pepper and pulls it in, right? That salt's
Mm-hmm.
breaking down the external enzymes, and so that flavor of that pepper is going down and mixing with the smoke particle, right? And it's been pulled into the meat, and I'm desperately trying to remember the name of that chemical process that creates the smoke ring, but I can't, for the life of me, I can't think of it right now.
Yeah,
That's
we
what.
need to do a demo at the store and let people watch you cook this brisket. It's very interesting. It's very uncomplicated around things that you would think would be complicated, and it's
Yeah,
super ridiculously complicated around things that you wouldn't even think about, like the wood. And
yeah,
Gary, the wood is shipped to Gary from Texas. The
right.
temperature, the how long he cooks it, those are all somewhat standard, but there's some very interesting things that Gary does when he cooks his brisket.
But
So
yeah,
we're
and
gonna go
that's all about managing these chemical processes. It's really kind of an interesting science. The
on.
guys who have
It
spent the
is.
time to break this down, right, to understand what's happening at molecular levels, documenting it, it's really kind of fun to
Yeah,
read.
it is. It's very interesting. So, what's your recommendation if someone wants to buy barbecue sauce or rub for the first time? So, let's say at barbecue to you, let's say we go to your display cabinet and they look through what you have.
Yeah.
What are your best sellers and why do you think that is? And if someone's just getting started buying something, what would you recommend?
I don't know. First thing is to understand what your taste is, right? Um, some people, for example, they like a heavy hickory, right?
Hmm.
Flavor. Everybody likes hickory, and because it's the quintessential barbecue flavor, right?
Hmm.
And so a lot of guys will make that. Understanding your spice levels, right? What you like,
Yeah,
understanding how savory you want that sauce or that rub to be.
sure. Yep.
Um, and it's an interesting question because it's really all about taste,
Yeah, it's
right?
what you like and what you know your family will like and how spicy they'll take their meat and
Yeah.
all of
And
that.
by the way, what you like today, you may want something different tomorrow. And that's
Yeah,
one of the really cool things about barbecue is there is no bad barbecue. And if you're
right.
doing it for yourself, you make it to what you want it to be,
Right,
right?
of course. Yeah. So it's customizable.
Yeah.
Uh,
Those flavors can be wonderful. And I want to say this over and over again because guys like me, I understand I'm a restaurant and I'm doing in the restaurant one particular type of barbecue that is representative of the mid 1800s in Central Texas, right? That's what I'm making, right? But and we're going to do that every single day because that's our taste profile, that's our brand, right? That's what we're doing. But if I'm over on my deck, and then I'm like everybody else. Today I want sweet. Tomorrow I want spicy. The next day I want savory. Maybe I'm
mhm.
going to throw a maybe I'm going to throw a herb or something in it and get a little bit different twang to it. Maybe I'm going to put some citrus towards it, right? Um, And so far we're just talking about beef in this. We hadn't even begun to talk about pork, right?
Chicken or turkey or pork or
And,
sausage. Yeah.
because under these same rules, we can start talking about things like pork tenderloin, right? Who is a very dry piece of meat. So then we build injections, right, with
Hmm.
this stuff. So now we take these flavor profiles and we start mixing them in with apple cider vinegar or orange juice or these kinds of things that are very acidic, right? And now we start injecting them, right, into what
Hmm.
would otherwise be very bland pieces of meat, like pork tenderloin, for example.
Hmm. Hmm.
And pork tenderloin and pork shoulder are two extremely different flavor profiles in what they do. So the pork shoulder doesn't need it because it's got so much fat. Fat gives you savory, so you don't have to do anything. The tenderloin has no fat, so you've got to inject it, or it's going to be a very dry, bland piece of meat. Right?
Hmm.
So we talk about marinades, and we talk, and that's one thing. Marinade, when you thin all this stuff out, and you put it in a baggie, and then you let that piece of pork sit in there overnight, right? The enzymes are doing the same thing, right? It's kind of a denaturalization context, so that sits there and opens up the marinade, soaks into that otherwise bland piece of meat, right? And then when you go put it on the grill, you're cooking all those sugars and everything into it. So now suddenly, pork tenderloin has this beautiful flavor, robust flavor that you never thought it could have, right? So injections are also another aspect of this whole topic.
Well, Melanie is telling us that we're making her hungry by showing all these pictures. So that's exactly what we want to do, Melanie. We want you to get in your car and drive the barbecue to you right now and order.
There you go.
So isn't that what we're trying to do? No, trying to have some
And
fun.
so
So yeah. So
this is really a complex topic. So I hope, and I'm kind of just skimming across the top of the waves at best, right? Maybe this is something I'll put in the book one day if I ever get the time to sit down and write all this stuff down.
yeah. She says fat gives you savory, and she said that's my biggest takeaway, and that's very
Yeah,
interesting to know. So, because it melts down the context of the meat and puts
right.
savory into the meat, is that
Because
right?
that's the most fundamental form of the glutens, right? It's within
Mhm.
the meat itself, and so when heat and meat come together, that gluten is released, and that's that beef flavor or pork flavor that you so remember or understand, right?
Yeah. So when you do a burnt end, or is that a different rub? That's just your basic salt and pepper rub. It's just the way the
Yep.
meat is cooked.
Just
Is that right?
Yeah, we're just all you're really doing on the burn ends these days is you're cutting the shark fin off, and we cube it up, and we just coat it the same way we do the overall brisket. But
Mm-hmm.
being smaller, they cook a lot faster, right? You don't go through all the heat phases and stuff, and it's only one. Since it only comes off the point, then it has all that fat in it. So a burn in will cook more like the way we make them. They'll cook more like a prime rib than they will a brisket, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, very informative. Thank you for all of that. And for those of you that want to watch this again or get the information, we do post all the videos on the website, so you'll find it there in the next day or so. We have a huge video library on all different kinds of barbecue topics from Gary on YouTube. The YouTube channel is super easy to cruise through and find what you want to watch. But we always wrap up with some chat about philanthropy and kind of what else you're up to, Gary. So can you tell us what are you up to as far as philanthropy going this week?
Oh,
And
yeah. Let's see what we got going on right now. We've got Gig Harbor Volleyball on the counter takeover. They were our kickoff. They've been there 2 weeks, and
Mhm.
so they're just about to finish up. And I highly encourage everybody to come in and give me their receipt. This team is a fantastic team. There's not a lot of budgetary dollars for them, and from what I've learned from talking to the leadership, and so that's why we extended them for a second week, right? So they're trying to buy uniforms and do all these kinds of things, and and we want to give the kids the most opportunity they can. So they're in right now. Starting next Monday, Kiwanis will be in the social club. Kiwanis will be
Oh,
taking
okay.
over the counter, and they'll be in the store doing different things. And a lot of those guys are also the guys and gals are also some of the authors that hang out and sell books. Um, we're getting ready to remodel the authors corner. This is interesting. So we're getting rid of the tables and stuff that are behind the author,
Mm-hmm.
and we're about to go in and put bookshelves all back there so they can so we can have a more of a little library look,
Oh,
right?
nice, fun, like a reading
So,
corner almost.
so
Yeah.
we're gonna put a little bit of investment in that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and since it's lasted now 3.5 years, it's it's
Mm-hmm.
probably time to give it a little bit of a facelift, right,
Mm-hmm.
and help the
Nice.
authors out a little bit.
Yep.
What else are we doing?
You're still doing the movies and the bingo.
Yep. So next week, the 29th, is our free senior movie day, and that'll be fun. I'm also this week. You'll notice over if you go to the Gig Harbor Film Festival. For those of you guys that are local, I sponsor Theater Number 4 over there, so you'll see all the barbecue to you logos and stuff like that happening if you
Nice.
happen to go there. And tomorrow would be a really good day to go because it's going to be rainy here, and so what a great day to go in and watch some of these excellent films.
Very cool. And then I feel like there's something we're not thinking of. Well, maybe not. Oh, yeah. What's going on with catering? So, if,
Catering.
yeah.
Catering's kind of shifting. We, usually middle, as I've told you before, the middle of September, the big weddings and a lot of that kind of stuff are all gone now. End of summer parties are over now.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're getting back into um, some of the more formal things, some of the
Mm-hmm.
corporate lunches, into your lunch or banquets and stuff. We're getting ready to ramp on the next, probably the most important one coming up is we're starting to ramp now for November 11th, which is Veterans Day. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got several organizations that we're partnering up with on that one. And then no sooner than we get done with that, we got turkey back. So the pre-orders for turkeys are back this year. Supply chain has figured itself out, and we can now feel comfortable taking orders, and that we're not going to call you late and tell you no. All right. So yeah, remember we just do breasts. We don't do whole birds, and so you can bring those turkey shots out. We can either slice it like you see in that picture, or what we prefer to do is we prefer to deliver it as one whole chunk so that you can pick it up early, put it in your oven and just warm it up on Thanksgiving
And
Day.
slice it on your own so it doesn't dry out.
So it doesn't dry out.
Mm-hmm.
Because once that outside skin is on there, that will hold all the moisture and butters and everything in that turkey for you.
Mm-hmm. And you need to order early if you want
Yeah.
turkey, right? And catering in general with barbecue to you, as is a daily, the daily rush to get your food in general, you just have to order early. You have to, email Gary or call Gary now if you want something in the next, after the next month or so. He's always booked. So,
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share before we wrap up, Mr. Pocket?
Nope, I think we're good.
All right.
Come in and support the kids as much as you can, support the authors as much as you can,
Mm-hmm.
and just do good things.
Yep. Sounds good. Thanks, Gary. We'll talk again.
All right, see you later. Bye.